Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In today's video, I'm going to give you guys my NFL Power Rankings post 2024 NFL Draft. How I'm going to do my rankings is we'll start off with the bottom 3 teams, and then we'll move on to my top 10 teams. There is a lot to talk about in this video, so let's not waste any time. Let's run the intro and then get right into it. We are going to kick it off with my bottom 3 teams, and coming in at 30th, third from the bottom, we have the Denver Broncos. Now, of course, the big news with the Broncos is Russell Wilson no longer there. They traded away Jerry Jeudy to the Browns. So the new era of the Denver Broncos is you have Bo Nix drafted in the first round. Now, I think this is a team, they are at least a couple of years away from seriously competing, especially in that division with the likes of Kansas City. You have the Chargers now with Jim Harbaugh. The Raiders, I think, have gotten better this offseason. So the Broncos, really tough season ahead of them. I think it'll be a tough year or two, but if they get a couple more draft picks, if they're able to get out of some of those other bad contracts like Mike McGlinchey, then they can really rebuild this team. I do like Sean Payton as a coach. I think he's a good coach, but this roster needs a lot of work before they will be seriously competitive. The one good thing, though, for them is that down the stretch of last season, they did start to play a lot better, and maybe they can carry some of that momentum into 2024. Now, coming in at number 31 in the power rankings, we have the New England Patriots. So they are also ushering in a new era with Drake May as their quarterback and Gerard Mayo as their head coach. This is also a team that they need a lot of work in order to improve in a very good division with Buffalo, Miami, and the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers back. So this is a really tough division, and they are just relying on Drake May to carry them. I think this is a team probably a couple of years away. They have some good players on their roster. Christian Gonzalez looked really, really good as a rookie last year before he got hurt. They have some other players on the offense and defensive line. You like Matt Judon, but overall a team that's going to be seriously away from competing, along with what's going to be in a very, very competitive, tough division in the AFC East. And now coming in at number 32 and bottom of the power rankings, we have the Carolina Panthers. Now, it's so odd for a team to have the number 1 overall pick, but they traded that away to get Bryce Young. Bryce Young didn't look great as a rookie, but he was in a really, really difficult, tough situation with the head coach getting fired and Frank Reich throughout the course of the season. Now they have another head coach. Did they bring in enough weapons to help them out? I do like the drafting of Xavier Legette. I thought that was a really good move, really good fit, and he's just a great overall weapon. Could be like a DK Metcalf type player. But this is a team, they still have holes all over the roster. I do like some of the players they brought in free agency. You bring in Jadeveon Clowney, you bring in DJ Wonnum. Those are some good moves right there. But that's just a team where, yeah, it's going to be rough. And I kind of feel a little bit bad for Bryce Young just being in that situation. I think give it another offseason or two, and then you'll finally start seeing the Carolina Panthers turn it around. Very intrigued by how they look with that new head coach and with Bryce Young heading into year 2. Let's now move on to my top 10 power rankings post 2024 NFL draft. And this was really difficult, especially towards the back end of the top 10. But I'm going to start off in 10th with the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Buffalo Bills have lost some big-time players this offseason. They traded away Stephon Diggs. You lose Tre'Davious White. You also lost Gabe Davis. But they've brought in and made some decent moves. I like the pick of Keon Coleman at the start of the second round. They traded down, accumulated more draft picks, while also being able to get Keon Coleman. They bring in Curtis Samuel, a guy who I think's always been underutilized in his career. You have Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. There's weapons there for Josh Allen. And Josh Allen is obviously the X factor on this Buffalo Bills team. One of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And you look at their defense last year, absolutely decimated with injuries. A lot of those guys coming back. They're hoping Von Miller can play most of the season. You get Matt Milano Milano, but a lot of guys who were injured, they are now coming back. And I think Buffalo, as of now, when you just look at having one of the best quarterbacks in the league, you're getting guys back healthy, you've lost some pieces, but overall, as of now, I'm going to put them slightly ahead of their divisional foes in the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets, but they're right there at 10th. A lot of big losses. I'll be very curious to see how they look adjusting to all those losses. And coming in at number 9 in my power rankings, we have the LA Rams. Now, the big story of the offseason, of course, is Aaron Donald, arguably the best defensive player of the last 20 years. He retires from the NFL, and that is a massive, massive hole to fill for the Rams. However, I think that they've done a really good job this offseason. You bring in Jonah Jackson at left guard, one of the better left guards in the league. You bring in Tre'Davious White. You draft Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, 2 defensive players, to begin your draft, and I think those are just both really good picks for the Rams. I think the Rams are destined for a pretty darn good season. Not only that, but you sign Darius Williams, you sign Cameron Curl, and I think the Rams secondary should be a lot better. Of course, you're really going to miss Aaron Donald, but you're hoping guys like Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, they can, fill that hole a little bit. Nowhere near what Aaron Donald can do, but maybe they can do what they can. Plus, you look at offensively. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams, Matthew Stafford. I think just the big key for the Rams is, can they stay healthy? Can Stafford stay healthy? Cooper Kupp stay healthy? You look at Tre'Davious White. If those guys can stay healthy, I could see the Rams coming in with a big-time season, and they are well coached by a guy like Sean McVay. So it'll be interesting to see how the Rams do. Health is the major factor for the LA Rams in 2024. And coming in at number 8 in my power rankings, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have lost a number of just cornerstone players to that franchise this offseason. You look at the retiring of Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox. On the offensive defensive lines, those were your leaders. Those were just the key superstar players. They're both retired now. You traded away Hassan Reddick, arguably maybe your best pass rusher. So how do they make up for that? Well, the Eagles have been lauded as really nailing the draft the last couple of years. This is going to be the year where you need to see those guys step up if the Eagles want to have a really good 2024 season. I do like some of the moves they made in the draft. You get Quinyon Mitchell, you get Cooper DeJean. That's going to really help out a secondary that underperformed big time in 2023. You also bring back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's a good move. He played really well when he was in Philadelphia before. And to help out the offense and to take some of the load off Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, you sign Saquon Barkley. Eagles have a good offensive line. Saquon Barkley is going to get good blocking, should be able to have a pretty damn good year in Philadelphia. So overall, I think this Eagles team, yes, they lost some key pieces, but they should still be a very competitive football team in 2024. Can Jalen Hurts maybe take another step forward too? That remains to be seen. Now at number 7, we have the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers, I thought, have had a really solid offseason so far. I was a little bit curious about the whole signing Josh Jacobs, getting rid of Aaron Jones. Jones is just so good in your system, but clearly Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst thought that, going with a guy like Josh Jacobs could elevate the run game. Also, a big thing is you bring in Xavier McKinney at safety. That was a massive need for the Green Bay Packers. Also, Jordan Love, he finally, it took him a while to get going in his first year as the starter, but towards the end of the year, he was magnificent, even against the 49ers outside of that last throw to Dre Greenlaw, which ended that game. But against Dallas, Jordan Love in the playoffs was so good. Towards maybe the last 7-8 games of the season, Jordan Love was really good. You give him another offseason as the starter. They have all kinds of weapons there. I think that he is going to take another step forward for the Green Bay Packers, and I like their draft. You have Edgerrin Cooper, the linebacker. You get Javon Buller, the safety, so you're really focusing there on defense. You still have some great players there. You look at Jair Alexander, Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary. So this is a really solid Green Bay Packers team, especially if you consider the great coaching from Matt LaFleur, and also Jordan Love should be taking another step forward. This will be a really tough team in 2024. Now, at number 6, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. We all know Joe Burrow, he was hurt for the vast majority of last year, missed most of the season. Him coming back healthy changes everything for the Bengals. When you just look at how good the Bengals are with Joe Burrow, they've been able to beat Kansas City with Pat Mahomes. They've been able to beat Buffalo with Josh Allen. They have a positive record there in those games. You draft Amarius Mims in the first round to help shore up that offensive line that's just seemingly always struggled as long as Joe Burrow's been there. Orlando Brown, Amarius Mims is your bookend tackles. You got to like the sound of that. I do like the drafting of Chris Jenkins Jr. out of Michigan, also just to shore up that defensive line. Never a bad thing if you can improve your play in the trenches. But the big story here with the Bengals is you get Joe Burrow back, fully healthy, ready to go. They still have all their weapons there, and I think the Bengals should be in for a big-time bounce-back season. And yeah, really curious to see just how good Joe Burrow looks with maybe better protection up front and just another year just being healthy, avoiding injuries. That's going to be so key for the Cincinnati Bengals. Coming up next, guys, I'm going to give you my top 5 teams post-NFL draft. Alrighty, guys, let's get into the top 5 teams in my NFL power rankings after the 2024 draft. And at number 5, we have the Detroit Lions. This is a team that they were really, really good last year, and they have been able to add a lot of talent to this roster in the offseason. A big loss for them is losing left guard Jonah Jackson, who went to the LA Rams, but overall, I think that they have a net positive in terms of talent added to this roster. You look at what they did in the draft. Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw, that's going to really shore up your cornerback room. You also added Carlton Davis. Factor in maybe Emmanuel Mosley being healthy, and you look at those top 4 cornerbacks on that roster, it's really good, and there's also a ton of potential there to work with. Then you add DJ Reader to the defensive line. You shore up that defensive line, never ever a bad thing to do. And offensively, I think the biggest thing for the Detroit Lions is keeping their offensive coordinator. That was the massive issue. We all just assumed that he would be gone in the offseason, that he would get a head coaching job. He decided to come back for another year, and that's just something that I'm sure that Dan Campbell was super excited about. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Speaking of Amon-Ra, he signs the massive extension. Penei Sewell signs the massive extension. So this is a team that they're doing things the right way. They're really just rewarding their players who they've drafted and who've really performed. It's a team that they're bringing back most of their guys, so there's no reason why they shouldn't have another fantastic season there in Detroit. They've added some players to their secondary, which was a bit of a need down the stretch, especially in last season. So I think the Lions are a team that are just poised to get even better. Now, I do think their division is going to be a little bit more tricky because you have the Green Bay Packers, who I think heading into 2024 are a lot better than they were heading into 2023. The Chicago Bears should be a lot better. Minnesota Vikings, we'll see. They did miss Kirk Cousins for most of last season, so we'll have to see there. But that's the one thing that could potentially hold them back, is that their division, I think, will just be a lot more competitive. However, this Lions team is still really, really good. And at number 4 in the rankings, we have the Houston Texans. Their offseason has just been a work of art by Nick Caserio. D'Amico Ryans just must be thrilled over the moon. You look at some of the guys they've added. Danielle Hunter, the edge rusher. Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, Azeez Al-Shire. In the draft, you had Kamari Lassiter, you had Kalen Bullock. Those are a lot of really, really good players. Add that to what they've already have. CJ Stroud, maybe one of the best up-and-coming quarterbacks in the entire league. You're going to get Tank Dell back healthy. You have Dalton Schultz, Nico Collins. Wow, I mean, their offensive line looks good. The defense is looking good. They've added all these players. There's no reason why the Houston Texans shouldn't just take another massive step forward. They, like the Lions, were able to keep their offensive coordinator. Bobby Slowick will be there for another year. That should really help out for consistency with CJ Stroud and their weapons. And the Houston Texans are, they'll be one of my favorite teams to watch. I think this coming season, just to see how well they can perform. Been a huge fan of D'Amico Ryans for the longest time, and really glad things are working out well there in Houston. Number 3 in my power rankings, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Now the Ravens, look, you add Derrick Henry. One of the big issues the Ravens have had is they've had just so much inconsistency at running back due to just injuries. It seems like every year for the last, 2-3 years, all of the running backs get hurt. You bring in a guy like Derrick Henry, who seemingly was kind of just made for the Baltimore Ravens, just a big, tough, bruising runner. Just think of all those games when it gets to November, December in Baltimore, the cold weather, he's just going to be running through guys. What a great fit there in Baltimore. Also a really big fan of their draft. Some of the guys they got, Nate Wiggins, TJ Tampa, Roger Rosengarten, Adisa Isaac. Just the Ravens do things the right way to stay consistently competitive in the NFL, just drafting really good players, and I'm just so impressed with the job that they do there in Baltimore. They're going to be a team that if things go right, I could absolutely see them competing for a Super Bowl. No reason why they shouldn't be, and that's why they're number 3 in my rankings. Number 2, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the 49ers are a team where we're essentially on offense, we're running it back, and we're going with the fact that another year for Brock Purdy in this offense should get even better. Besides that, the entire offense is coming back. You look at the defense, a couple of minor adjustments made on the defensive line. You could potentially argue at defensive tackle we're maybe a tiny bit worse when you have Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw moving on, but you bring in Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott. And the good thing with both of those guys is those guys have been able to stay healthy and play a lot more games. Eric Armstead's missed 13 games the last 2 years. Javon Kinlaw's missed quite a bit of time in his career so far. So you have more reliability at defensive tackle. Maybe talent-wise, it's a little bit lower, but at least you can count on those guys to be there. I do like the massive upgrade at edge. Chase Young had a couple of good games for the Niners. Outside of that, not too much. Now you bring in Leonard Floyd, another just consistent guy. You can count on 9 to maybe 11 sacks every single year. Really like that. And also, I just think that the 49ers defensively, you had a really solid draft too. You had another weapon in Ricky Pearsall. You had Bernardo Green. The big issue is they have 2 really good players who are coming off of injury. You have Dre Greenlaw. I think he will be on the PUP list. He'll probably miss, I think, probably the first 6, 7, maybe 8 games of the season before we see him. And you have Talanoa Hufanga coming back from injury. If both of those guys, and I hope that Hufanga will be back for week 1, but if you can get Hufanga back for week 1, and if you can get Greenlaw back for maybe somewhere in the middle of the season, I think you got to be feeling really, really good about this defense. I really do like the additions that we've made. Also, I do like the fact that Nick Sorensen as our defensive coordinator, a lot more of a fit with what we do in San Francisco compared to Steve Wilks last year. And you have Brandon Staley to help kind of guide and coach Nick Sorensen as he's a rookie defensive coordinator. Overall, though, San Francisco, no reason why we shouldn't be just a very competitive team. And we're basically running it back with a few minor adjustments here and there. Number 1, I just have to stick with Kansas City at number 1. Like, they've beaten the 49ers, obviously, in the Super Bowl. Anytime the Niners have played Kansas City with Mahomes, they've always beaten the 49ers. So I can't realistically put the Niners above Kansas City. Look, they've lost some players. You lose L'Jarius Sneed. That's a big loss to that defense. However, they made some really good additions to their offense. We know that one of the massive areas of need was that wide receiver. They struggled all year long. Mahomes had his worst season as a professional last season just because they had nothing at wide receiver. You get Hollywood Brown, great speed. Mahomes, we know, can air the football out. You draft Xavier Worthy in the first round. You add some offensive line depth in Kingsley Suamataia in the draft. Man, I think Kansas City offense, look, their defense is still going to be really, really good. And you add some major weapons on offense, and that could get Kansas City just back to that elite level, especially if they can get Mahomes playing like he did before. It's going to be super hard to stop Kansas City. But there you have it, guys. Those are my power rankings post-NFL draft. Of course, before the season starts, a lot of things will change. There will be some moves that will be made, some trades that will be made. You look at potential injuries that could happen. I will do another power rankings prior to week 1, but I just wanted to give you my thoughts on where some of the teams stand after the NFL draft. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, whether you agree, whether you disagree, where you might have teams ranked instead of where I have them ranked. But there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, do all the good stuff. And before I head on out, I'm going to say 2 things. The butt counts, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.